Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of Thinking Deliberately. And this one's a good one. It's about intention, awareness, choice, and response, the 4 pillars of constructive development. So, over the last 5 weeks and the 5 episodes, we've been building a different way of understanding the self. We begin with the idea that the way you think may be the problem. And then we looked at the self as something constructed, not fixed. Then we explored dynamic intelligence and the capability to become aware of how you are constructing yourself, your context, and your response in the moment. And then we introduced the awareness quotient, or the AQ, as a way of understanding how much of that construction is available to awareness. And in the last episode, we challenged the myth of personality and looked at thinking styles and cognitive intentions as the building blocks of repeated patterns. Today, we bring the first arc together because if the self is constructed and if response is constructed, then we need a way of understanding how that construction happens. In constructive development theory, this process can be understood through 4 pillars: intention, awareness, choice, and response. I call these the 4 pillars of conscious construction. And they matter because most people think life works like this: something happens and I respond. And that sounds obvious. Someone says something rude and I get angry. Someone criticizes me and I defend myself. Someone ignores me and I feel hurt. Maybe something goes wrong and I panic. Something threatens my identity and I attack, withdraw, justify, explain, perform, or collapse. Event, response. It's quite simple, isn't it? Except it's not really that simple. It only looks simple because most of the construction is hidden. Between event and response, a whole world is being built. You are constructing meaning. You are constructing self, and you are constructing context. So you're constructing threat, safety, possibility, blame, identity, all of these tons of things: intention, emotion, consequence. And then you respond not to the event itself, but to the world you have constructed from it. And that is the crucial point. We do not simply respond to reality, we respond to constructed reality, our constructed reality. And the 4 pillars help us to see how that happens. So let's begin with intention. Intention is not merely what you consciously want. That is far too shallow, obviously. People often think that their intention is obvious. I just want to help. I just want to be honest. I want the best for the team. I just want to explain myself. Oh, I want to be understood. I just want fairness, or whatever fairness means. So maybe that's true. But CDT asks a more uncomfortable question. What is the deeper intention organizing your response? Because very often, the intention we claim is not the intention that is actually constructing the moment. You may say you want to help, but underneath, you may want to be needed. You may say you want honesty, but underneath, you may want permission to be cruel. You may say you want clarity, but underneath, you may want control. So this is why intention matters. It is a directional force of construction. It shapes what you notice, it shapes what you ignore, and it shapes the meaning you create. It shapes the version of yourself you become in the moment. If your intention is to protect identity, you will construct the situation very differently than if your intention is to understand. If your intention is to win, you will listen differently than if your intention is to learn. So if your intention is to avoid discomfort, you will construct different choices than if your intention is to tell the truth carefully. Intention is the pillar, the first pillar, because construction does not begin neutrally. We're always learning towards something, away from something else, maybe into certainty, away from shame towards approval, away from threat towards control, away from vulnerability. And much of this happens before we know that it's even happening. And that brings us to the second pillar: awareness. Awareness is the capacity to notice the construction, not afterwards, not once the damage is done, not when you are retelling the story to a friend in a way that makes you sound more reasonable than you were. Awareness means noticing while the construction is alive, while your identity is tightening and while your certainty is forming, maybe even while your emotion is gathering evidence and your body is preparing the response, while the old pattern is walking towards the microphone. Awareness is the moment the automatic becomes visible. In psychology, it's called automaticity. And when this automaticity becomes visible, something extraordinary happens. It stops being entirely automatic. Not completely, especially not immediately, but not in some silly self-help way where you suddenly become enlightened because you took a deep breath and drank herbal tea. But enough to create a gap. And that gap matters because the gap between construction and response is where development lives. Without awareness, intention moves straight into response. Something happens. Your hidden intention organizes the meaning produces emotion, the emotion energizes behavior, and out comes the old response. Then afterwards you say, that's just how I felt, or that is just who I am, or I had no choice. But with awareness, the chain can be interrupted. You can notice, I am trying to win. I am protecting my image. I am constructing this as disrespect. I'm using logic to avoid emotion. See, these kind of things are awareness. And awareness is not always comfortable. In fact, real awareness is often deeply inconvenient. It ruins your excuses. It interrupts your certainty. It reveals the hidden transaction inside your virtue. It shows you that your response is not as pure, noble, rational, or inevitable as you wanted it to be. That is why many people prefer insight to awareness. Insight can be flattering. Awareness can be humiliating. Insight says, I understand myself. Awareness says, I just caught myself constructing nonsense in real time. And that is much more useful, which brings us to the third pillar, choice. Choice is one of the most misunderstood ideas in human development. People talk about choice as if it is always available. It's definitely not. Choice depends on awareness. Without awareness, what we call choice is often just habit with a story attached. A reaction happens and then the mind claims ownership. I chose to say that. Yeah, but did you really? Or did the old construction speak before awareness arrived? I chose not to apply for that opportunity. Did you? Or did fear construct the situation as impossible and then call itself realism? I chose to avoid that conversation. Did you really? Or did discomfort quietly dress itself up as wisdom? Choice is not merely selecting from options. Choice requires seeing the construction that is producing the options in the first place. Because sometimes the option you need is not available inside the awareness you currently have. At one level of awareness, the only options may be attack, defend, withdraw, please, comply, or blame. At the higher levels of awareness, new options appear. You ask, you pause, you might name the pattern or hold the ambiguity, challenge the assumption and stay present. Choice expands as awareness expands. That is why telling people to make better choices is often useless. They cannot choose what is not available to their awareness. You cannot choose a response you cannot yet construct. So the developmental task is not simply to make better choices. It is to increase the awareness from which better choices become possible. That is a very different conversation. And then we reach the fourth pillar, response. Response is where construction becomes visible. It is the output. It is what you say, what you do, what you avoid, what you create. Notice it's what, not how. What you destroy, what you reinforce, what you make worse. Response is the evidence of the level of awareness from which you are operating, not the evidence of your worth, not the evidence of your goodness, or it's not even a moral judgment. It's just a clue. Your response reveals the construction that produced it. If your response is defensive, something was constructed as threat. If your response is contemptuous, something was constructed as beneath you. If your response is avoidant, something was constructed as dangerous or not worth facing. If your response is performative, the self may have been constructed as something needing an audience. What if you're curious? Maybe you need to be aware enough to hold uncertainty. This is why CDT is interested in response, not because response is everything, but because response is where invisible construction becomes observable. You can tell yourself any story you like about how aware you are. Your response will usually reveal more. That is why development cannot be measured only by what people say they understand. People can talk at a very high level and respond at a very low one. They can explain complexity and still behave simplistically. They can discuss compassion and still punish disagreement. They can teach leadership and still need control. They can talk about awareness and still be completely captured by image. The response tells us what becomes available under pressure, and that is where the work is. So the four pillars are not abstract, they are practical. In any moment, especially a difficult one, ask yourself, what is my intention here? What am I aware of? What choices are actually available to me? What response am I constructing? Those 4 questions can change the moment, not because they give you a script, but because they return you to construction. They stop you pretending that the response simply happened. They reveal your participation. And participation is a beginning of responsibility. Again, not blame, responsibility. Blame says, you caused this. Responsibility says, you are now aware of your part in constructing this. And that is a profound difference. A person operating with low awareness experiences life as something happening to them. A person developing awareness begins to see that they are also participating in the construction of the moment, not controlling everything or not causing everything, not responsible for everyone else's behavior, but participating. And once participation becomes visible, the possibility of deliberate response appears. That is conscious construction. Intention becomes visible, awareness creates the gap, choice becomes possible, and then response becomes more deliberate. This is the heart of constructive development theory, not becoming perfect or calm or spiritually impressive, not just becoming a better personality type, but becoming increasingly aware of how you construct yourself, your context, and your response in the moment. And then, from that awareness, choosing more deliberately. This is why the 4 pillars matter in leadership. A leader who does not know their intention will unconsciously construct the room around ego, control, fear, or approval, or how they appear. A leader with awareness can notice the construction before the room has to suffer it. It matters in coaching. A coach who does not know their intention may quietly turn the session into rescue, advice, performance, or dependency. A coach with awareness can return to the client. It matters in education too. A teacher who does not know their intention may construct compliance and call it learning. A teacher with awareness can construct conditions for thinking. This is the basis for my next PhD on andragogy. It matters in politics. A politician who does not know their intention may construct certainty, tribe, enemy, and power. And a politician with awareness might construct complexity, responsibility, and service. Wouldn't that be nice? It also matters in relationships. A partner who does not know their intention may construct love as possession, silence as rejection, honesty as an attack, or conflict as danger. A partner with awareness can choose a response that does not merely protect the old self. And it matters in the relationship you have with yourself. Because without awareness, you will keep reconstructing the same self and wondering why your life feels familiar. Different job, same self. Different partner, same self. Different goal, same self. Different self-help book, same self, now highlighted in yellow. And the 4 pillars give you a way to interrupt the repetition. They ask you to slow the construction down enough to see it. What am I intending? What am I aware of? What choices can I construct? What response am I about to make real? And that last phrase is important. Make it real. Because response makes construction real in the world. Your internal construction becomes external consequence. Words land, actions shape, and avoidance costs. Defensiveness closes and curiosity opens. Precision clarifies, and then awareness changes the room. So, as we close this first foundation arc, here is the uncomfortable thought. You are not simply reacting to life. You are constructing responses from intentions you may not have examined, through awareness you may not yet have developed, into choices you may not fully possess. And then you call the result me. And that's the problem. And it is also the opportunity. Because if the response is constructed, then with greater awareness, something different can be constructed. Not always and not necessarily easily, but increasingly over time. And that is development. This is thinking deliberately. And today's uncomfortable thought is this. Before you defend your next response, ask yourself whether you are aware enough to choose it. Thank you.